So thank you, Dr. Chakravarti. Thanks a lot to the esteemed panel here, distinguished guests, and all the fellow delegates. So I'm taking a slightly different track. I thought I will, when I consult with my clients, one of the first challenge that they articulate is how do we go about doing this whole digital? And what really is digital? We've always done technology, and if you look at engineering firms, they've always been very, very tech savvy. So what has changed? So I'm a part of Deloitte Consulting. I represent a brand called Deloitte Digital, which essentially believes that digital is about elevating human experience. Things fall in place. People will use the systems you develop if you make it easier for them in their day-to-day life, whatever interventions you do. So for us, a digital transformation involves, it's cutting, the display is cutting a little bit. It involves, a sort of a marriage of business and culture. So what we've generally looked at, when we've done digital strategy, is looked at normally transforming the business. Hey, what could be, for example, a new digital-led business model for me? Can I move for example, offering O&M services as a kind of an AMC to maybe a platform-led business, where the client could themselves, use your platform, and you essentially license them and make your money through them. The other is, transforming of the whole organization itself. How do you ensure that the folks in your organization actually start working differently? Really leveraging all these tools and techniques that digital bring. So for us, digital is sort of a marriage of business, desirability, and obviously the economics of it. It has to make business sense. I'll just step through some of these. I think the deck which we had, the laptop hung, so we have an earlier version. So essentially, when we look at our clients' digital innovation ambition metrics, as we call it, there are essentially three kinds of opportunities that organizations look at. One is what we call around your core. And most of the operational efficiency aspects actually will fall in here. You are using your existing product. You have your existing clients. How do you do it better? How do you crunch the capital project, for example, time frame? Is really a core fundamental. How do I improve, let's say, my asset efficiency? It's an example of a core transformation. The other is what we call adjacent transformation, where you're essentially saying, hey, I do this bunch of things. Could I do something very similar and start doing for other clients? A kind of an example could be, hey, can I spin off my O&M and make that as a separate service? Or the earlier example that I mentioned, let's say as an O&M, I use this IIoT-based analytics platform. Could I license this platforms to firms where I am directly not providing services, through my personnel, but where they could use this platform, connect their assets, get those insights, and I basically do a license play. That's an example of an adjacency. And the third is really transformational. And the transformational is really about creating new business model, additional sources of revenue. Great examples, was for example, what GE did with Predix, or what Amazon, did with AWS. Obviously, in digital, one of the underlying assumption is all these are technology-focused interventions. Why technology? Because there is no other way to really scale up the offerings in this digital age. So technology essentially provides the scale-up capability to what is essentially a newer kind of ways of working. And as we said, typically, for example, today, transformational kind of a use case could come, let's say, from 3D printing. So we have, for example, a large industrial client which makes farm equipment in US. And one of the models that they've looked at is US farms are huge and distances are huge. So actually and farm machineries tend to be simple. So they actually send a technician with a truck with a 3D printer who diagnoses, and if it's a part which can be easily printed there, actually prints it there and replaces it. That's really a transformational capability. right? AR, VR based, wearables technology. A lot of our mine clients, for example, are using it. A lot of our power transmission clients are using it, where people operating on those high tension lines, they monitor their body through sensors, parameters, because what clients have realized is when people are exhausted or they are under stress, they don't perform well. They make mistakes, and mistakes has a cost. So these were some of those examples. The other thing that we've really seen, the way we look at digital transformation, we've sort of classified it into 4 maturity steps. First is what we call exploring. Most of our Indian clients are actually at this stage, where we are often called in and say, hey, what is this digital really about? Can you do a workshop for our leadership and let them understand what it is? Other is what we call doing digital, where you are using digital to extend a capability. A simple IoT platform implementation for me will actually fall in this case. You have a use case that is amenable to digital interventions, and you are essentially implementing that use case. There is no broad strategy to it. The third is what we called becoming digital, where you are using digital to break down silos. See, one of the big, and this, for example, I was talking to a chemical client of ours. And the head of instrumentation says, you know what, I've made brilliant systems. But by design or by intention, I do it only for what is my silo. Because first of all, I'm not even sure if I should do it for the adjacent silo and how will they react to it. So while I might have competency to make a difference to the rest of the organization, I generally don't. And that is a fundamental problem. So essentially what digital, when you look at digital, you have to break down silos. We do cross-functional teams, so it's a very workshop-oriented mode, where the whole idea is, put somebody, we did a workshop with one, again, a process manufacturer, where actually we were doing some customer journey mapping and all that, Pankaj talked about a journey. Where on the table, actually one of the manufacturing guys said, you know what, I always thought procurement was a pain. Now that we were working together to solve this journey, I realized why is it a pain? Because they have certain KPIs, maybe with their auditors that I need to account for. Now that I'm aware of it, we can maybe work together to sort of address that concern. So that is a really example of becoming digital. And the last is being digital, where essentially you are getting into newer business model, which are digital-led. And to move to that being stage, there has to be tons of differences, different ways of, working that you will need to adopt. One is that, you'll need to create, and this is my experience of it, you need to create teams which are able to rapidly do something. And I'll come to a slide subsequently where we will show, how does this work. You need a governance structure. You need to encourage agile development. So you quickly test out something, prototype, scale it out. And you need to change your mindset, and this is especially true for the leaders. Experimentation has to be encouraged. In digital strategy kickoff, we talk about, fail fast but fail often. But on the ground, the KPIs stays the same. So nobody is willing to experiment. And that is a big danger. Sorry, we'll have to go back. Yeah. So essentially, if I look at the operating model, we have this concept of imagine and plan. This is where we look at why do you want to do a digital transformation. If, for example, the need is to create a new business model, then we bring a lot of outside insights. And we will say that, for example, what a different sector has done, or what is the leading, let's say, competitor or a role model in US is doing, or Germany is doing. That could conceivably come here. And we challenge the business into proving to us why that will not work for them, our clients. Because generally the rule of thumb is, hey, we are unique, and this wouldn't work for us. And we want to sort of challenge that. The other is this whole transformation. So first, imagine and plan is where you sort of conceptualize what it is that I am going to change in my business. And in transform, you basically bring this imagined solution to reality by doing a pilot, or in some cases, a proof of concept. And the operate is, once you have built this out, how do I scale it up across? How do I maintain these systems? The reason I am putting this up here is it has important implications onto your organizational structure. So typically the team which can do imagine and plan and transform is typically not the team you want to be doing operate. And the team which is in charge of operate, which is keeping the lights on, is typically not incentivized to think for imagine and plan. People will work on their KPIs. Imagine and plan is where we bring lots of outside and consultants, startup ecosystems, learn from them. And operate is the traditional technology organizations that we have. And in a final way, we execute it is that we do the imagine and plan through this define, where we uncover trends, and we create what is called a minimum viable offering. Minimum viable offering is basically a set of connected functionality that business can see making a difference in life. So for example, an IoT platform with the analytics, which gives me predictive analytics capability around machine failure on these XYZ critical equipment. So you've implemented IoT, you've implemented analytics, you've done some user training, that together is an MVO. And then we deepen design and basically scale it out. I don't think I'll have much time left. Finally, the last point I want to make is that we've seen that there are essentially 5 things that our clients who have succeeded in their digital transformation, which basically means it has met their objectives. They typically has outside analysts viewing them as a digital leader. One is they have created a digital talent pool and a leadership pool, which is basically attuned to how the future of work is evolving. How are things changing? What skills will I need 3 years down the line? There is a culture of innovation, this whole adoption, and engineering firms struggle with this whole idea that failure is okay, right? We've typically seen them create a sort of a startup incubator within the organization with their own employee. You need to have a balanced digital portfolio. A typical 70-20-10 is a good rule of thumb. 10% highly aspirational. 30% which is in that adjacent business mix, which allows you to test with this breaking of the silos, and 70% which addresses your current business needs, where folks on the field can stand up and say, yes, I have had a difference made in my life. It is not just something pie in the sky or a valuation game. Cross-functional collaboration, I said, is absolutely important. Otherwise, you'll never get to breaking these silos. You'll have systems which do one thing very well. An example was I had this call from a senior VP apps development for one of our clients, and who said, hey, we've started creating apps. We are great digital, but the way I see it is next year we will have 300 apps. Does a smartphone even have capacity to have 300 apps deployed? What do I do? That's an example. So, you need to sort of break down this mentality. Hey, I do this. Can I have an app for that? And I'm digital. And the final thing is use an ecosystem. If you think that you can do digital completely, we as Deloitte believe we need an ecosystem support because things change so fast. It is difficult for one person to stay relevant. And therefore, learn from others, outsource things which are not your. So the adage I use is, build for differentiation and buy for parity. If you think somebody else is doing one task that you are doing very well, go and buy a solution that works. Build, spend development effort only on those things which allow you to become the best in the world. Okay. With that, I think I wrap up. We'll take the questions towards the end.